and welcome to The Content Bite, a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. I'm Rachel Smith, a freelance journalist, copywriter, and content producer. I'm also the founder of Rachel's List, a jobs board and community for Australian writers and other creatives.
And I'm Lynne Testoni. I'm a journalist and a content writer as well. Rachel and I are your weekly co-hosts, and every week we're bringing you all kinds of tips, tricks, and some fabulous guests to help you make the most of your freelance business. This podcast is sponsored by our good friends at Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software made just for Australian freelancers and sole traders. It's everything you need to make freelancing easier. Find out more at rounded.com.au.
Also, if you're a gold member of Rachel's List, Rounded is giving you 20% off an annual subscription plan. Upgrade to gold membership for all the details. Hi, Lynne. How is everybody out there? I'm very happy to be back here on the pod again this week with another amazing guest. And this week's guest is going to talk to us all about promoting yourself and raising your profile without the ick, which is something that we all face, particularly because we're used to being behind the scenes, aren't we? Especially journalists are. And now we're all having to propel ourselves into the spotlight and be so visible. And it's very difficult.
It is. I think it's really tricky. So I'm really thrilled to have Odette Barry on the pod this week, because we've worked together on a couple of projects and she's just lovely. We worked in the Farmer Cookbook, which was fun. And she's so good at PR without being pushy. And I thought, let's have her on.
Amazing. Okay, tell me all about Odette before we get her in the hot seat.
So Odette Barry is a storyteller who loves nothing more than helping businesses share their stories through traditional media. She's a publicist, PR mentor, and founder of Odette Co, which is a micro PR agency based out of Byron Bay. How nice. Her career spans marketing and communications for Westpac, the Australian Physiotherapy Association, TAFE New South Wales, and Women's Fitness magazine. So she's worked all sides of the communications domain.
How amazing. Welcome, Odette. It's really great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, well, I'm really chuffed to be invited to come and have a chat with you both.
Oh, so nice.
We're going to delve into ick, aren't we? Or icky things.
Icky things. So to start off, Odette, how about you tell us a little bit about your background and what you're doing now?
Yeah, ick is big in PR. Not gonna deny that. It's such a strong part of that. But I really, truly believe that you can do it without the ick. So I'm really happy to be here and chatting about it. But yeah, so I worked in sort of corporate communications, as you mentioned, before moving to Byron Bay, which was almost 8 years ago now, and did the old COVID-esque departure from the metro world. And even before we left, my husband was like, I don't know how you're going to go in a regional town. You're very career oriented. Is this going to work for you? But my heart has always been so drawn to being close to nature and out of the hustle and bustle. So when we moved here, it really was very much about, I did try and bring my jobs with me and try and make working remotely work, but it was before Zoom was such a mainstay of the working life. So I kind of was forced, I don't know, that's not quite the right word, but pushed into starting my own business as a matter of location and needing to create my own thing. So I started Odette Co, very strategically calling it Odette Co because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, because I had a background working in marketing and communication. So I had worked in PR, I had worked in copywriting, I'd worked in social media. I could whip together a basic website that could function for a small business. So I often speak to being a professional yes person was probably the early stages of my business before really sort of expanding that into a bit of an agency, working with freelancers who were all friends in the industry, referring work to one another. And then 4 years ago, I really sort of overhauled what I was doing and moved more towards really narrowing my focus on PR, which is what I studied at uni. It was always the thing that I was the strongest at, but it was probably for the ick factor that I didn't lean into it as my sole focus because I always had a bit of a weird flavor. And also, funnily enough, my sister studied PR. She worked in PR. And I think there's something about siblings and not wanting to go into the same field to compete with one another.
Yeah.
Maybe that was in there like subconsciously. But obviously the DNA is quite strong in the family because we're all very natural talkers.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of what PR is. But yes, so for the last 4 years, I've actually been teaching business owners, early stage businesses, and also communications and marketing professionals how to do their own PR, because PR is bloody expensive. Really, for early stage businesses, it can be crippling. And really, I think early stage businesses should be reinvesting in product development or, you know, their service offering rather than outsourcing for some of these sorts of services. So I have so much respect for publicists, and I know they do incredible work. I'm so proud to be friends with some of Australia's best PRs, but I know that those services are not available for startups. So these days I'm teaching bizos how to do it themselves.
Wow, that's so interesting. So do you still sort of have the agency on the side with your staff or your freelance base of people, and then you've got the courses as well, or the training as well?
Yes. So the way my business is structured these days, I skinnied things down quite significantly. So I've just got one full-time employee, and then I work with some freelancers, but I actually only take on 2 clients per year. So like, you know, 10, 15% of my book is retainer work, and the rest of it is all the programs that I teach. And I basically take on that retainer work 2 parts. One, because I love PR and it's fun.
Yeah.
But also because I really feel like I need to be keeping my skills and craft current by teaching it, because things change, and, you know, an idea that might have worked a year ago maybe doesn't have any recency or relevance anymore. So I am very lucky that I get to be very selective and only work with my
a couple of clients,
dream clients.
Oh,
that's
amazing.
Lovely. I love the idea of hack your own PR, because I know that you do that because I follow you on social media. So what could writers learn about that? You've talked about small businesses. I mean, really, a lot of our audience are essentially a small business. How can they grow their media presence? Is it useful?
Yeah, well, so there's twofold here, I think, for writers, because I think writers naturally can have an extension into offering PR services for their clients. So they might be doing copywriting or ghostwriting or whatever it might be, and extend that service offering and say to your client, hey, why don't we also explore pitching you to The Guardian or Sunday Life or whatever it might be. And a writer can support in that sense.
Interesting.
But equally, if you're writing a book or you're wanting to build your portfolio and visibility as an author or as a writer, then you can PR yourself using the skills of publicity. And I love my, I don't want to say my favorite, but I really adore working with people who already have a communications background, because the top performers who come through Hack Your Own PR are always people that are marketers, authors, writers, social media managers, people that already have that base skill set. They're not afraid to put pen to paper, and it's really just an extension of that skill set into the PR domain.
Well, we've talked a little bit before about how writers, a lot of them are introverts and can be a bit, you know, find that self-promotion is icky. So what's your advice to help them get over that?
It's a tough one. It genuinely is. But I also don't think that's mutually exclusive just with writers. I think a lot of businesses that I work with are absolutely terrified, either terrified of being seen or don't feel equipped, like they're not a expert enough to put themselves out there. And I think most people go through that journey of having to do a little bit of exposure and, you know, rip the Band-Aid off and then do a little more exposure and ladder up through the process. But I suppose one of the things that I would say is that most journalists that I speak to are so hungry for different experts, different products, different people to have in their little black book of contacts for when they need stories. So if you think about the fact that there is a need there that needs to be filled, but also if, the introversion side of things, obviously you can hide behind your screen quite comfortably in PR because, the old world of PR was very much the rah-rah personality. I think that it was all about, parties.
Absolutely fabulous.
Exactly.
Type.
And
goodie bags.
Yeah, and I think that archetype has carried over for longer than perhaps is necessary, because the vast majority of my work is over email. And I think that writers can conduct themselves quite a lot better than, a very verbose, verbal human, so there's a lot of opportunity to do written Q&As to build your profile, as opposed to necessarily being on TV or podcasts or anything like that. But also, like, podcasts for an introvert, like us right now, it's an intimate setting talking to two lovely humans. It's, these are things that I guess we can get in our head thinking about numbers and going, oh, there's thousands of downloads and all these people are going to listen. But what I find is so many people have a person in their past that they're hiding themselves from. So often it's a old boss, a colleague, an ex-boyfriend, a old friend, people that you, for whatever reason, have latched some value on their judgment of you and where you are in your life. And often it can be as simple.
So interesting. I've never thought of that. Yeah.
That's why they're
holding themselves back, because they don't want to be seen, or they don't feel like they're qualified enough for the things that they're doing, or whatever it might be. And my tip there is, unfriend that person on LinkedIn, or unfollow them on Instagram, or whatever it is. Mute them, remove them from your radar, so that you can just push forward. I went through that process. I've seen so many clients go through that, and sometimes you just need to go, who's important to me, and am I letting this person hold me back from the opportunities that could come to me? And when it comes to like building your brand and your visibility, I always think, if you're not going to do it, who is? Who is going to celebrate your story? Because if you don't put it out there, we won't know about it.
Yeah, for sure.
So interesting. I mean, it'd be great to sort of talk about some simple tips you can offer, like to help boost your presence and find potential clients. Do you think it's all about social media, or is there something else you can do?
I'm someone who's based in regional Australia, and I know Byron's like almost a capital city these days in terms of regional cities. But we are so lucky to have social media at our fingertips to connect with people. And it doesn't have to be used as a broadcast platform. And I think that's what sometimes holds people back. They're like, oh, I need to be publishing daily on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter to build a profile and build a presence. What I recommend to so many businesses is use that as a one-to-one communication tool. So go and follow the editors or news anchors or producers that you're interested in being featured with, and strike up a DM conversation. Tell them about why a story that they recently published really resonated with you, or, get into some conversation, because that is such a valuable way to build your visibility and presence without necessarily having to go into broadcast mode. But look, networking events are back on. There's pros and cons to networking events if you're not necessarily a really, extroverted person. But, I always think that at those sorts of events, you only need to talk to one or two people and you've expanded your network. So if it's the people either side of you sitting in a crowd, or, someone huddled around a drink station, each of those exposure opportunities are, so beautiful to start extending your network. But podcasting, I think, is, such a huge opportunity to get your work out there as well. Australia has the biggest activity in the podcasting landscape. Late last year, we overtook the US on the number of podcasts in the country. That speaks volumes to our interest in this as a medium. And so I think if, people want to get their work out there, become visible, then looking for podcasts in your niche, doing some keyword search in Spotify and Apple around the terminology that you are really fascinated with, or that you write about, or that you're interested in working in, and finding the people that are talking about it, and use the same method, using social media as a tool to build the connection with those hosts and the producers of those podcasts. Beautiful way to get yourself out there.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, networking events are great, but what if you are really opposed to networking events? Is there a way to meet people in a more relaxed way?
Yeah, well, again, I think social media, there's so many online communities these days, and it doesn't have to be, again, you broadcasting, but there's a niche Facebook group for every interest under the sun. And because I have worked with clients in just about every industry, I am in the most unusual collection of Facebook groups you could possibly find.
It's so weird, isn't it?
From home renovation to beauty tips to, dog training, there is a Facebook group for everything. So a really great way to expand your network is to become an active user in those groups. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're in there asking questions all the time. It can be that you're a really helpful participant in that group. And often I will go into business Facebook groups and keyword search publicity or keyword search copywriting or whatever it might be, and find the people who are talking about there and jump in and offer some advice, send a link to a resource that's been useful for you in your journey, just being a helpful, good human. Is actually surprisingly useful for expanding your network.
That's really great advice. I like that. To keyword search groups for sure.
Yeah, that's great. I do think, networking is probably, I'm not really, I had difficulty with it. And I actually think it gets easier as you get older because you're less self-conscious. Like, I think when you're young and you don't know anyone, it's really hard. But as you get older, you realize nobody really cares. Everyone's there for the same reason. So you can go up to a random person at a networking event and sort of say, oh, hi, what's your interest in, TVs or whatever it is, or writing, it's a lot easier. I heard a tip somewhere about networking. Somebody said to go up to a group of 2.
Yeah.
Because 2 people are usually bored with each other by the time you get there. And they're having a third person changes that dynamic. And if you go up to one person and if they're terrible, you might get stuck with them all evening, or if they're not your person. But go up to 2, it usually breaks up. And it's also really easy to
extricate yourself.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that tip because I'm always the one pinned against the wall with the one-on-one person who won't let me go for the whole night.
Yes.
See, I'm the person who brainstorms a list of 10 or 15 questions beforehand. So I've probably pinned you up against the back wall with my 15 questions that I'm rolling out.
No, you're not weird like that, Odette. I would be welcoming you.
One other thing that I think is really useful is to think about every interaction you have anywhere in your life is a valuable place to extend your network. So if it's chatting to people at the dog beach, telling them what you do, because that word of mouth recommendation is so useful. If you're in the supermarket line and you chat with someone, a conversation sparks up, tell them what you do. If you're, at the school pickup, tell people what you do, because those networks are really where someone's like, oh yeah, I know Jenny. Yep. Let's, I've got a project coming up and my sister needs some help with it. They're those little idle opportunities that you can grow your connections through.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. I've got a lovely piece of work. One of my first big works was actually a running friend of one of my writing friends who, they asked her, do you know of anyone? And she said, oh yeah, Lynne's just started freelancing. And it's that sort of, informal connections often are the way to go, really, aren't they?
Lynne, Jodie Vasallo and I met in the dog park in Bangalore.
So right. You did the farmer cookbook.
That's how farmer cookbook was born.
Well, that's so nice. And yes, and of course I did the farmer cookbook because Jodie put a shout out there is a food media Facebook group, and she put a shout out, and that's when I put my hand up to be the managing editor of that. And most of the people who worked on that book came from that social media. So, that all goes back into what you're saying.
Proof is in the pudding, and what a beautiful
Yeah.
project it was to work on. And Lynne, you did such an extraordinary job.
Oh, thank you.
Herding the
Thank you.
cats.
Herding the cats, yes. But it was
Yeah.
lovely. But so I wanted to talk with all the social media about your website. Do you think, how good does it have to be? Do you need one? And can it be fairly simple, or should you have all the bells and whistles? What do you think?
I guess it depends what you're asking for
Mm.
and what your what sort of work you're going after.
Mm.
So I am such a big believer in hacking things in this world, and I also think we're so lucky to have at our fingertips great tools like Squarespace, which is unbelievably simple for those of us that are not necessarily super tech inclined to be able to pop something together. But if you're in the early stages of your business, I really just urge people to do things as much yourself as you possibly can. I think it is essential that there is an easy place for people to find you, because the first thing people will do after they've chatted to you in the supermarket aisle or in the dog park or at a networking event is Google you. So they will punch in your name, and it'll be either the business name you told them or your name. I met a man in New York, and he knew that I was Odette and I was a publicist, and that's all he knew about me, and he could find me online. Obviously, it helps when I've got a unique name, but you know, it's really, you want to make it easy for people to find you, but equally you want to make it easy for people to trust you. And there are simple markers of trust, and having a professional looking website is, you know, very simple to put together these days. If you are, you know, going for $10,000 projects, I think you should probably have a website that speaks to that client. So if you're going for $1,000 projects, you maybe don't need to invest quite as much in the aesthetic and the bells and the whistles. But there are, you know, if you're going for a high volume repeat client, and it might be that you were writing regularly for a client and managing social media or writing website copy or something like that, and they need to meet with you regularly, then having appointment booking tools embedded within your website, again, very simple tools to embed in a very cheap website these days. That's something that you might think about having, you know, some bells and whistles. But if you're an author or, you know, a writer, and, you know, it's more about having a place where your work is visible and can be found, that can be a really basic website. But the one thing that I would say here is that if you want to be easily discovered, a LinkedIn profile is probably the best place to do that, because LinkedIn is the highest optimized search result in Google for your first and second name in combination. So that is always going to come up first in Google. So if you don't have budget, don't have time, don't have skills, don't have interest in building a website, then you absolutely can have a really robust, well-written, great portfolio of your work all stored on LinkedIn. And then it's working twofold to help you build connections and extend your network.
Fantastic. Well, you mentioned just earlier that you take on 2 sort of clients, retainer clients a year. Are you finding that you're pitching for those clients, or they're coming to you and you're knocking people back and sort of passing clients on?
Bit of both, to be honest. So the client, my main client at the moment, I had worked with in the past. You know, she'd done Hack Your Own PR, she'd done a custom media plan, and then we hadn't worked together for, you know, a year. And then I approached her because I could see that there was a really big opportunity coming up for her, and I wanted to be part of it. But I also get a lot of inquiries. I mean, I'm really, really lucky at this point in my business. I'm, you know, almost 8 years into having a business, you know, in some way, shape or form. So there's a lot of word of mouth that happens with that. But also there's a build up of social media presence that happens over time when you're regularly feeding the beast of social media. But I have also done some tenders in the past as well. So a little bit from all of the above.
How interesting as well. Like, you could do the Hack Your Own PR course And then you could go, you know what? I love this. I've learned a lot about PR, but it's just all too hard. So I'm actually going to hire Odette. So it's another vehicle for you to pick up clients.
Yeah, well, it's also, you know, like a natural progression of Sophie's business, in that in the early stages she couldn't afford a PR retainer, and her business has grown to the point now where A, she doesn't have the time, but B, she can comfortably afford to pay me to be on retainer. And so it's kind of like worked out perfectly that we've got to kind of mature together.
Yeah, amazing.
Oh, that makes sense.
It also makes her a dream client because she totally understands PR. So she knows what I'm looking for, and she can get the most bang for buck out of me because she comes to me with really good ideas about what we can do.
And also she probably has a sense of what's involved in the work. So she's not going to be quibbling all the time and saying, well, did that really take 5 hours or 10 hours or something? She actually knows what's involved.
Absolutely. So much so that she's often like, I think you're working too much. Maybe you should.
She is the dream client, definitely.
Totally.
Yeah.
So the courses, how many courses have you run, and what's it like setting it up? Because there would be a bit of setting up for that, wouldn't it? A lot more than you probably knew at the beginning.
If I speak from truth.
Yeah, always we encourage that.
Yes, I would say that when I first started Hack Your Own PR, I had no idea what I was doing. I also didn't have a plan for what I was doing, which, you know, sometimes that's the best stuff in business. I was really quite burned out in the agency model, and I was really struggling and needed to slow down. And so I took some time away from my business, and I had a 2-month break where I just sent a message to all my friends in Byron Bay who have businesses. And I said, if you need any physical manual labor, hit me up. I need a break from my brain, and I need to keep moving and doing something so that I don't get idle. And my friend has a ceramic studio, and I went and dipped ceramics and packaged her online orders. My friend has a dog food business, and I was delivering dog food around Byron Bay, which is like the dream job. And during that time, I was really, really examining what I wanted to do. And because I was so burned out, I also was like, do I still want to work in communications? Do I still want to work in PR? And like this little idea sort of sparked during that 2-month period. And I was like, I think I'd been listening to a lot of podcasts about lead magnets at the time. And I was like, I'll come up with a lead magnet idea. And all my friends being business owners couldn't afford PR, and they would always ask me to do it. And so I kind of was like, what about if I come up with a 7-day PR Kickstarter that is just a way to share a bit of basic knowledge, to give people the foundations to be able to DIY their PR. And I put that out in a few Facebook groups, and 650 people signed up to it. And I was so surprised, like, because I had no idea previously about, you know, DIY PR, whether that was a thing. And I hadn't written it. I had just thought about it as an idea. And so obviously I had to quite quickly write it and release it to the market. So I did that, and I will admit that probably on day 5 of day 7, I was in the morning writing the content and filming the videos furiously before the email went out. In doing that, I was like, well, I've got this audience of 650 people that are interested in DIY PR. What can I sell to them off the back?
So was this like a free 7-day thing?
Yeah. So I just was sort of forced to really think, okay, what does this look like? What could it be? That's where Hack Your Own PR was born from. But in terms of like establishing a course, I've run the program for 4 years now. I run the program 4 times a year. So a couple of hundred students have gone through it now. And last year I had the absolute good fortune to extend the business into Singapore, and we're doing the same in New Zealand this year. Everything is so templated, you know, and I've also got every successful pitch that a student has sent has been added into the library of resources for the program. So, it's building and growing in becoming more useful every day. But also every time I run the program, I send feedback forms at the end and ask everyone for how can I improve it? How can I make it, what would you take away or add to this? So every time it's become more rich and better results for everyone that's come through it. But I suppose if I had to draw a line in the sand now and start it all from scratch, it would be so much work to do. But because it's been 4 years of a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there, it's impossible to equate how much work is involved.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really interesting. I'd love to know, because you run it 4 times a year and you're also juggling your PR clients, how do you structure your time? Is it some, you're in launch mode some of the year and you have people taking over the PR side of things, or how does that all work?
Yeah, so the way that I structure it is that I dedicate 2 days per week to the program. And that involves, providing feedback, doing, edits and mentoring sessions with the students in the program, as well as the actual live classroom teaching. And then the remainder of the week is dedicated to my retainer work. So, my retainer work really occupies probably a day and a half to 2 days per week. And so that's the general flow, but there are 2 weeks within each program where I do one-on-one mentoring sessions with everyone on the program. And so my retainer work drops back during that time, but I just always dial things up in advance, knowing that that's coming.
Wow. And how do you price the programs? How do you figure out how to price them? And has that changed?
Yes, it's definitely changed. I started off and I think they were $1,500 and it's now $2,900. It's increased quite significantly, but I also have 4 live calls now with journalists and news anchors and editors embedded in the program. So I pay the journalists for their time. I now do 2 one-on-one mentoring calls, which weren't in the original program. So it's extended out based on my personal input. But interestingly, the feedback I get from a lot of people, and I know this sounds really gross, but a lot of people are like, you need to increase the prices. You need to, it's actually worth so much more than $2,900. But for me, in terms of the function that I think my program plays in the marketplace, is that if people were going to pay $5,000 for my program, they might as well pay for a publicist. And I don't want to take away from that market, because I actually think people should pay for a publicist if they can afford it. I think the program plays a really important role for those businesses that can't afford it, and that's who I want to support and work with. But pricing is such a funny old game. I think in all industries, as we grapple with our imposter syndrome and am I worth this, and will my clients pay that? Some advice that I heard was that if 70% of the proposals that you send out come back with a yes, it's time to increase your pricing.
Oh, that's interesting. So we talked a little bit about you being in Byron. Do you think that's hard, working outside a capital city? Because I also love to know, because you've been running your business for 8 years, you said, and how much of it's changed since COVID, because it seems that so many people have moved to up and down the coast and to regional areas.
Sea changing.
And Byron is quite creative as well. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've only operated my business remotely, and I would say 99% of my clients I've never met in person since I started my business. So, before COVID arrived, all of my meetings were on Zoom. For me in my business, I guess the only thing that changed is that I got a lot busier with COVID, because I think a lot of businesses that were previously paying for publicists looked for cheaper alternatives, and learning how to do their PR became an option. Equally, I think some businesses got funding like JobKeeper that maybe allowed them to invest in their own businesses a little bit more. But in terms of the Byron landscape changing, there's a lot more Porsche 4-wheel drives and Teslas. I think there's a lot more money in the area, which has been hard because you're part of the gentrification journey yourself, so you can't like pull the ladder up behind you. But it's hard seeing lots of, the small businesses that rely on local staff like backpackers, and there's no backpackers can't afford to live here anymore. So it's changed the landscape. And I think the magic of Byron is the crazy, chaotic, landscape of different minds and different ways of thinking and different ways of living. And I think it's maybe become a little bit more monoculture, and it's a little bit further out from Byron that is housing all of the beauty and the diversity.
Yep. Amazing.
Wow.
We could talk to you all day, Odette, but we've just got one last question for you. We really love hearing about tech tips from our guests, and I'm guessing you have a few, services or programs that you really love, particularly with your courses. So what couldn't you live without?
Oh, well, I mean, it's too boring to say, but Zoom is like essential, but I feel like that's like the worst suggestion ever. One thing that has really come onto my radar, which I know everyone is talking about right now, is ChatGPT. And I for me in my program, I just think this is the most fabulous tool for businesses that don't necessarily have a real strength in copywriting to, put 4 bullet point ideas of what they want to express into that and say, edit this. That's the perfect companion for students in my program. That's a real goodie. But there's so many amazing tools. I think Squarespace for businesses is so great, being able to put your work out there. Yes, look, my business is all a massive tech stack. I love everything. I honestly couldn't live without all of the amazing things. Acuity for appointment booking has been a real lifesaver.
And Acuity is owned by Squarespace now too, doesn't it? And it sort of integrates
all
quite well.
Integrated. Yeah, it's beautiful. And like there's nothing better than being at the beach and seeing someone book into your diary for an inquiry about a product that you're selling. Like that. Yeah. That is very satisfying, knowing that you don't have to go back through that loop of how's Wednesday or Friday or all of the rest.
Amazing.
Wow. Well, thank you. So to, practice what you preach, where can people find you and find out more about what you do? Obviously, they can search Odette Publicist in Google, but beyond
Apparently it's quite effective. Yeah, look, I'm on all of the social media platforms, Odette Co. But otherwise, odetteandco.com.au, and I would love to chat with anyone that's interested in learning a little bit about the wild world of PR without any ick involved.
Amazing. Oh, Odette, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And we just loved getting your advice for freelancers about how they can promote themselves better and perhaps how they can get better at PR as well. I found it so interesting about what you were saying about authors, and I think that could be another really separate course, because authors really need to do their own PR these days. It's not really done through the publishers, so I imagine it'd be really helpful for a lot of people. So yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being our guest. And that's the end of our show. So thank you to everyone who's listening and sharing us on social media. We'll put links in our show notes to get in touch with Odette.
And thank you again to our sponsors, Rounded, easy accounting and invoicing software made just for Australian freelancers and sole traders. You can find them at rounded.com.au.
We'll see everybody again next week.
We will. See you next week, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.